A very warm welcome to all the viewers to my presentation. So let's begin. So the topic is computers have always been a boys domain. Really with a question mark comes in. Is it a reality or is it a myth? So my research is a study to trace back the changing role of women in computing. So in the agenda, the normal basic structure stuff. So there are 5 chapters: introduction, literature review, methodology, findings and discussion, and conclusion. Normally, findings and discussions are separated chapters, but to fit it within the scope, within the time limit of this presentation, I have merged them together. Starting with the introduction. So why this topic? What are the research background and what is the motivation behind selecting this topic? Talking about the motivation, this is a rare research topic about which most of the people are not aware of. There is also no research which undisputedly pointed the exact reasons on why women left the IT industry. Research background: women are often wrongly perceived as a weaker gender of the Homo sapiens who are meant to do only the household chores. The brilliant contribution of the women to the society are not fairly remembered and credited in IT. And this myth that all computer jobs always had male dominance, I just want to break this myth because this is not true. And this is also a kind of tribute to the strenuous efforts made by the women in the past and a small effort to bring the woman forth. Next is what has happened to IT after 1990s. And here I will be discussing the problem definitions and the challenges. So the women were the founders and pioneers of the computer programming, and they dominated the computer industry for decades. But after 1990s, for unknown reasons, the number of women programmers or the women in computing jobs unfortunately started declining very significantly. And this kind of occupational segregation in terms of gender has no other professions ever faced before. So these are the problem definition. The two basic challenges I have during doing this research is the very broad sample size and long time period. By broad sample size, I have to do the take into the account of the analysis of the whole world. So the different countries have a different demographics, different gender ratio, different uh, female labor participation ratio. So these are all considered. I'm not talking about just one place or just one specific time. So the long time period is also there. This is more than around 60 years. Doing next to really now narrow down the research, I have formulated 3 research questions. So first is what are the main factors which affect the job preferences choices in men and women? Second research questions, how has the programming evolved and changed? Third, what are the main drivers that established the male dominance in IT industry since 1990s? Moving to the next chapter, literature review. Women friendly jobs and men dominated jobs. So, what are the gender job preferences really? The two world wars, along with the industrialization and globalization, has created and refined jobs as well as the role of the genders as well. There are two important terms here: job queues and labor queues. By job queues, I mean employees' preferences, and labor queues means employer preferences. So what a employee seeks in the job and what really an employer seek in the employee. So these both the terms, so job queues and the labor queues, always coexist together and must fulfill each other for us job selection to happen for the gender as well. But it is still an unsettled question that to what degree of the preferential fulfillment by which gender can result in the job selection or occupational segregation. Moreover, no research shows that the men are more intelligent or efficient than women, especially in terms of white collar job. You may argue that if you compare the physical build or the physical capacity, then men are slightly better than women in some of the regions, especially. But if you compare the diligency, efficiency, and intellectuality, then there is no research which says that women are less than men. So the null hypothesis is already rejected here, that the segregation happened because of the job became a little more complex in nature. Now, for the gender job preferences, I am using the Maslow hierarchy of needs to explain what gender seeks in a job, and this is almost true for both the genders. Along with this, this is also the job characteristics preferences are also subject to the external factors like times, trends, locations, relationship status, education, age of the employee, and the government is politics. These variables change constantly with time and place, but this Maslow hierarchy of needs is almost the same. It might be a little different for the different gender, but this is almost the same. And so this pyramid, in the bottom of the pyramid, there is a basic need going up, psychological needs, and the top of it, the self-fulfillment need. Salary is always the basic and the sizable component for getting the job. So in the biological and physiological factors and the safety that comes into it. But then on the upper level, love, belonging, and esteem, that is really important. So if a employee feels that there is a belonging there in a particular company with his colleague or her colleagues, and there is a stream also is getting, or she is getting, then uh, they, the employee will retain the job. Otherwise, the attrition might happen. And the top of it is the self-actualization. I really want to mention that for genders, especially if we talk about the woman, the second factor, the second layer, psychological needs is a little more for them as compared to men. And so just signifying that you might have a retention of a woman employee with lesser salary, but if you challenge the psychological needs or don't fulfill it, then it might uh, not be a good idea there. Now, for the demographics, I have taken some countries into the account to analyze the labor force participation rate for the male and female. The year is 2012 and 11 and 12 both actually. So they're starting with, on the left side of the graph is this have a, you can see there is a difference. Pakistan, Morocco, Tunisia is in the initial part of the graph, or all the blocks. There is a huge the building or the block for the male is really high, but for the female it's low, signifying that labor force participation is really low for the woman in this. And on the later part is it's really becoming comparable, or higher labor force participation rate for the woman as well. But still these countries like Brazil, Colombia, Thailand, Peru, they still have a bad GDP. So is it that they have the same kind of white collar jobs that they are having? Apparently not. Otherwise, the GDP would have also been high. The second graph also talks about the female labor force participation rate. 2 years are taken into account, and here not the countries but the larger regions is they are part of the continent. So the 2 years is 1992 and 2012. If you compare for the whole world, so the female labor participation rate is almost not much change. Then you can see there, but for most of the region of the continent and continents, uh, there is a significant change. That is, the female labor force participation rate has increased in the 3 decades, but there are a few exceptions as well, like South Asia and East Asia. mm, For some unknown reasons, the female labor force participation rate has decreased there. Moving ahead, uh, here the same female labor force participation rate is again discussed, but here the 1980 year is taken into consideration and is compared with the year 2016. So the x-axis talks about the year 2016, and the y-axis talks about the year 1980. So the green box take into the account of the countries which always have, even in the 1980s, have a higher than 50% of labor force female labor force participation rate there. Moving ahead here, uh, sex ratio or the gender ratio of some countries are analyzed, especially in terms of which country has the best gender ratio and which country has the worst. So for every 100 female, Nepal has actually the best female male gender ratio. So for every 100 female, 84 males are there, 84.546 to be precise. Then China, then Kurkau, moving like that, Martinique, Latvia, Lithuania, Ukraine. On the other side of that, this is a really unfortunate number. So starting with Qatar, Qatar has the worst. So for every 100 females, they have 302 males there. Then United Arab Emirates, almost it's 1:2 or 1:3 for Qatar. In fact, so Oman, Bahrain, Maldives, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, they have a very bad gender ratio for female. Next is the comparison between the ratio of female to male labor force participation rate with the log GDP per capita. This is because merely analyzing the female to male labor force participation rate is not enough. The quality of job also matters. So, what kind of a job a woman is doing there? Means is she doing the job out of her own will or desire, or is she doing it out of compulsion? Is she forced or subjected to the extreme poverty or helplessness that is making her doing the job? This explains the U nature of the curve here. So, and as well, that why certain countries, in spite of having very high female labor force participation rate, still have a very bad GDP. So the initial part of the curve belongs to those country or represent those country in which the condition, the job, the nature of the job is not good, which in which the women are doing, and most of the job are belongs to the informal economy, and moving along with the curve. So on the extreme right of the curve are the countries, rather the developed countries, in which the work conditions is good, as well as the job is also white collar job. So this is quite common in all the developed countries, and they also have the very high GDP because of this reason only. So the next is the countries which have the high most STEM graduates in 2016. So we're starting with means on the top of the ladder, China leads it by quite a margin. 4.7 million students have all the STEM graduates in 2016. China had. Then comes India, then United States, Russia, Iran, Indonesia, and Japan. One peculiar country here is Iran there, not just because of the number, the 335,000 STEM graduates, but also out of the 335,000 STEM graduates, 70% were female. India and China are obvious to be on the higher side because of the very high population there as well. Not just because of they're doing well, but having a large human resource helps the STEM graduates number there. So just to give you some idea how much population India and China holds, so it's if you take 3% out of in the whole world, if you just consider 3% out of every 3%, 1% is either an Indian or Chinese. So India has around 17.x5% of population. On the other hand, China has 18.x5% of population. This makes almost 36, or rather 37% of the world's population. USA has 4.35, and for your information, just about Europe, Europe has nearly 9.35 or XY% of population with respect to world. Talking about the next chapter, methodology. So what research methods I have used? So the research method here used is completely qualitative research methods and approaches. Since the validity of data is extremely important, so only legitimate and authentic organizations as well as the websites are used for the uh, for the citations and the data gathering. Um, for example, IEEE Computer Society, ACMW, HWC, and GHC are used for the computers or the IT references. And as in the literature review, which I have already done, World Bank for most of the cases are used. Moreover, I have also digged into the job advertisement for programmers in Germany, and there I used the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung newspaper, and some again the authentic websites as there as well.